Alrighty.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from the Unadilla track.
We've just left Coward Springs, where we spent the last night, but it's been a little while since we've caught everyone up to date on what we've been doing, where we are. I think last time we caught up with you, we were just about 30 minutes outside of Port Augusta, heading north to the Northern Territory. So a lot has happened since then. Mel, why don't you start with where we kicked off our journey to the north?
All right. Well, we started a convoy from Lake Hart. Met some really amazing people. We were all heading the same way, so we decided why not all stick together, which made the trip really fun. Great chat and banter on the UHF radios. That really kept us entertained on those long dirt roads.
It sure did. I was quite happy to finally be able to use the UHF that we'd spent a bit of coin on. But a bit of an intro to the convoy. So back when this would have been day 2, day 3 on the road, we stayed at a place called Daly Head, sort of on the southwest coast of the York Peninsula, and we met a lovely family, Craig, Helen, and their son Bodie, and got along like a house on fire for the couple of nights that we were both there, and then we carried on and kept in touch. As luck would have it, I think mentioned before, I was in the previous episode when I was in Whyalla, they were only 4 camping sites away from us. So anyway, we got chatting. We'd already, by that point, decided that we were heading north.
Thanks to Kobe
and myself. And so we decided from there, well, why don't we all head north together? We'd all heard the stories and just felt that in general it's probably safer to be travelling as a crew, especially on a long, relatively isolated and quiet bitumen, for the most part, road. So that's what we decided to do. So along with Craig, Helen and Bodie, we also tagged up with another family that they had met on their travels, Jess, Dion and Hudson. And so we formed the sort of convoy of 3 with a few additional groups joining in. We had
Dylan, Danny, Dexter and Olive.
Yep.
And then we met up with Curdy, Shannon, Jackson, Harry and Darcy.
Yes. And so
played a bit of leapfrog, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So that ended up being quite helpful, actually, because a lot of the sort of roads and just as well a lot of the places that we were staying, it was kind of like a big question mark whether or not it was worth staying at a free camp or planning to go to a resort. So it was always handy to have a bit of information from up front with the scouts. So anyway, we met up with Craig and Helen and Jess and Dion and their children, and also Dylan and Danny at Lake Hart, and from there we made our way up to Coober Pedy, quirky town, very, didn't feel unsafe, but I think if we'd been there on our own and not with a few other families, we probably would have skipped it and carried on. Yeah. But nevertheless, we persisted.
Everything happens for a reason.
Exactly. So I think the first night we got there, we drove up with everyone else, got some takeaway pizza, and ended up watching the sunset from the breakaways, which is just about the edge of the Painted Desert. Lovely spot, conservation park, again, dog friendly, so we were able to take Kobe with us. And it was a sort of quite nice, pleasant start to a 3-night stay in Coober Pedy. We got to go to a few of the shops. I think one of the Opal shops that we went to, which was great, and again, dog friendly. The owners there were so lovely. that's where Mel picked up a bit of bling bling. But the interesting part was, so that's the reason we ended up there, was it's right next to the spaceship from Pitch Black, the old Vin Diesel movie, if any of you are familiar with that. And I believe he's actually there at the moment filming another edition of that series of films, The Chronicles of Riddick. If you're familiar with it, you'll have seen it. But anyway, so we went in the opal shop and we're like, oh, you let dogs in, and the proprietor there was fairly brazen and transparent about her opinions, which was, I've never had a dog come in and threaten me about a price or try and steal anything. So the dogs are welcome. It's the people that I'm a bit concerned about, which is fair enough. And so that was excellent. We dropped a bit of coin there on a nice bit of opal on a necklace for Mel. But again, lovely people. When in Rome. We also went to Tom's Opal Mine, which is just on the edge of town. A working museum. Great little spot. It was just awesome to be able to go inside
through all the little tunnels and
see everything, see how it was all done. Oh, sorry, we're just...
They give you like a blue light to flash against the wall so you can kind of spot for opals yourself. That was really fun. And then at the end they give you scones and tea and coffee, which was a nice little surprise. Kobe smashed a few scones, that's for sure. Sorry, just overtaking.
Yes, so...
And that's where we met Shane and Lara, the next part of our convoy crew.
Curtie and Shannon as well, who'd just come through the Unidada track, which we're on right now, and come through the painted cliffs or hills. I think it's painted cliffs or hills. One of the two. Desert, painted desert, even better. So yeah, we met all of them. We were all on the same tour, and so began a slightly more expanded convoy as we made our way out of Coober Pedy towards the Northern Territory and Uluru. So straight out of Coober Pedy, we decided to make it for the border, and just past the border is a roadhouse called Kulgera. Now, it happens to have the notoriety of being the first and last pub across the border. Yep. It was a nice little stay over there. I think we've got a bit of drone footage that, through the magic of video editing, will appear now as I'm talking. And so we stayed there one night. It was the coldest morning on the trip that we'd been on so far.
We weren't expecting that at all.
Yeah, so for those of you that have followed us on the Instagrams and the YouTubes, you'll have found the footage of me. Looks like I'd been smoking inside the caravan, but in actual fact, that was just how cold it was that morning. Yeah. So, in any case, we carried on. We went along to El Dunda, Servo, which also happens to be in the centre of Australia itself. So that was pretty cool to hang out there, have a look around, fill up on some relatively inexpensive fuel before we made the trek along Lassiter's Highway towards Ayers Rock Campground. Now, as we were making our way there, we realised that we were a little low on alcohols. So we decided, it's going to be expensive in Illawarra, which is sort of the main town from which, the Ayers Rock Campground and that are based. So we stopped at Curtin Springs, which is about 100 kilometres outside. Never have I felt so violated by the price of alcohol. So for Great Northern Whitefish Stubbies 6-pack, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's basically a 6-pack of bottles of mid-strength beer, was about $38 dues. That was not nice. Consider the fact that you'd probably pay for 24 in back in civilization, about $50. So that really stung. Anyway, so we bit the bullet on that because we knew it probably wasn't going to be any cheaper in Uluru. We were right. It would only have been more expensive. Carried on. Actually, probably should mention, before you get to Curtin Springs, you happen to come along a big rock on the left, which a lot of people mistake for Uluru, which I like to call fake Uluru or Uluru, which is Mount Connor. I would say equally impressive.
Pretty spectacular.
Pretty spectacular. You can't get really close to it though. That's one thing worthy of noting. Anyway, so we carried on and got to Ayers Rock Campground. Nice little setup. They've got an IGA there. They've got plenty of activities. But as you would expect in an area like that, alcohol is sparse and expensive. So as a food and resources, the bread is actually frozen and then shipped in. So you don't get much fresh food of any sort in that part of the country. So Ayers Rock Campground wasn't ridiculously expensive, but previously, in a previous life, we had looked at going up there and staying at a fairly fancy resort called Longitude 131, which has the, I guess, not to use notoriety again, but it is known for being very bloody expensive. I think 4,200 Australian dollars a night with a 3-night minimum stay. But open bar and everything's included, and you've got an uninterrupted view of Uluru. I reckon I could get our money's worth out of that open bar with hindsight. So shout out to them.
We're going to try that one, aren't we?
We might be back.
Maybe if we win lotto tonight.
Yes, maybe. Anyway, so we were very fortunate once we got to Ayers Rock Campground to meet Aisha at the reception, who actually works at the campground itself, and she happened
to have a day off coming up that we would be there on, and she offered to take Kobe for us, which was awesome. She spoilt him rotten, even went and bought special dog food for him, took him for walks, let him sleep in the bed.
Most importantly, well, not most importantly, but it did mean that we got to go straight right up to Uluru, and with the rest of the close convoy of Jess and Dion, Hudson, Craig, Helen and Bodie, we got to do a little bit of a cycle around. We did actually bump into Katie and Shannon, who were doing a walk around with their children. I think they were perhaps a little bit jealous about our mode of transport.
Yes, I think they regret the decision to walk with 3 kids. Well,
yeah, but it was really good fun, and we then got to go to this sunset viewing area and actually watch a proper Uluru sunset. Again, through the magic of video editing, you'll be seeing the sunset as I am speaking to you right now. It was phenomenal, really, like worth the visit, worth the effort, that's for sure. So
that's when we were supposed to start heading back south, weren't we?
Yes.
And the rest of the convoy were heading for warmer weather, so we're a little bit odd. We are chasing the cold weather and everybody else is chasing the warm weather. So the rest of the convoy are all heading up to Darwin, and we were planning on heading south to try and find snow.
Yes. And so through lots of begging and pleading and perhaps independent decision making, I convinced Mel very reluctantly to let us carry on at least to Kings Canyon and then to Alice Springs. As I'll talk about later, I have this sort of infatuation with Alice Springs from watching a lot of Impasha from our time at the corner. And so we carried on and made our way, again leapfrogging behind, I think it was Dylan and Danny who were staying at the Kings Canyon Discovery Parks Resort, which funnily enough, by the nature of its popularity, it is now more expensive to stay at Kings Canyon than it is to stay in Ayers Rock. So make of that what you will. Anyhow, so we made our way up to Ginty's campground or rest stop, which is just outside of Kings Canyon and the resort itself, just a bit further north. And we stayed there and used it as a launching pad. We actually left Kobe in the caravan to his own devices, and he was fine. The others sort of looked after him while we did a pretty sharp run.
Emus.
Oh, emus. Yes, you're just going to have to trust us on that. Yeah. But we're seeing wildlife off to the side, and I think we did it in what, an hour and a half?
Yes. So once we got up the 500 stairs.
500 stone steps to the top of the sort of Kings Canyon plateau area.
Once we got our puff back, we decided to pretty much jog.
Yeah,
the whole track.
Now, again, I'll splice in some footage and imagery of who is going through. It was honestly like being on Mars, on another planet. I mean, all the vegetation aside, it was just incredible. And to actually be able to see that and walk through was definitely worth the effort, worth the trip.
Yes, definitely.
So after Ginty's Lookout campground, we started and went through what's called the Mereenie Loop Road. Now this was our first big section of dirt track that we'd done with Nigel Lenova, as well as with the cruiser, and it was also this first time the others in our crew had done any sort of proper dirt tracks as well. So it was a real big sort of test. All right, moment of truth. Okay. Not bad.
Not too bad. Not really. I mean, everything's messed up, but not as bad as what we thought it would be.
Yeah. Everything's still in one piece.
How do you know where there's all something?
My hat's still up. Mel's is down. We didn't take down the photos.
No.
They're still up there though.
Yeah, I thought we'd see how it goes.
Aside from some red dirt and a bit of silicone coming off and numerous screws which I haven't been able to identify where they've come from, only that they've started appearing on the floor.
So that's the concerning part. I feel like we're going to find out the hard way where they've actually come from.
You just have to excuse the corrugations. It's remarkably comfortable actually, but it just shakes around a lot. So other than that, van did fine, car did fine. I think
everything survived.
The others had a few incidences, but ours has bash plates completely all across and under the caravan. So good thinking, Nova. It did work.
Yes, thank you, Nova.
So we got to, what was it, the gravel pit, which was literally just gravel and lots of prickles. So we stayed there one night. But more interestingly, it was sort of at the base or entrance to a probably hundreds of millions years old crater called Goss Bluff. Fascinating place. Again, well, it's just that part of the whole country is sort of unexpected in terms of scenery. I think.
Well, the Mereenie Loop, we weren't expecting that one. That was.
So I'm going to show my sort of niche nerdiness, but there was a show called Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, and when you're driving on this Mereenie Loop Road into this valley, it's just sort of misty and mysterious. It's like the land time forgot. And the
wildlife was incredible. That's the first time we've seen wild camels just running across the road.
Within 10-15 minutes, we're talking wild camels, brumbies, wild horses, wild dogs, donkeys. A donkey that actually looked like Donkey out of Shrek, which was amazing. And all of this whilst we were sitting very comfortably at the front of the convoy. And for anybody that's been on a dirt track, they'll understand why it's nice to be at the front of the convoy, because you don't have to deal with other people's dust. So for us, it was quite a pleasant, safari viewing experience. I got the feedback through the radio that the others weren't quite experiencing the same level of comfort and visibility, which I think might be something to do with the rig that we were towing. Anyway, minor details. So, Goss Bluff, again, I'll try and splice in some footage just to or at least photos to demonstrate quite what it's like, but it's just a sort of fascinating, natural piece of architecture. Anyway, so we carried on, and from there we entered into the corrugations.
As you can see, Kobe deals with this really well. Fast asleep. Can't hear him snoring over the corrugation.
We just have to slow down a fair bit.
Okay.
All right, back to usual programming. So from there we were entering into the West MacDonnell Ranges. Again, another unexpected feature of the Northern Territory itself. We were expecting desolate, wide desert, which is kind of what we're getting here in the Unadada.
Yeah.
But in West MacDonnell Ranges, it's like you're in the Flinders. It's just spectacular, green, lush, and all of these freshwater gorges that
everywhere. Every 50 kilometres, weren't they?
Yep, and fairly fresh. Again, the magic of editing. You will see us entering into Ellery Gorge, which was a lovely 14 degrees Celsius pool of fresh water.
Yep. But we had to do it. You can't really go all that way and not jump in.
Yeah, and it was close enough to where we were staying that we could, again, given the nature of national parks, you're not allowed to take domesticated dingoes like Kobe inside there. So we had a bit of a dip and then came on back, and from there we made our way out to Alice Springs. Alice, who the is Alice?
That
was basically running through my head
the whole way there.
Yep, it was great.
Non-stop.
So Alice Springs, if you haven't had your head under a rock and you live in Australia, you've probably heard some sort of news on professional or social media about how it's in effect some sort of crisis in a crisis of itself, which, not to belittle it, there is a serious alcohol problem amongst the dry camps and the Aboriginal community. That said, I think we felt way safer there and way less sus than we did in
Coober Pedy.
Yeah, it was.
To be honest,
fine.
I mean, as long as you're not silly while you're there, use your common sense. We didn't go out after dark.
We didn't hit up the Alice Springs nightlife.
No, to James's disappointment.
No regrets there, but no, it was fine. I mean, we got there on Wednesday, and so the restrictions on alcohol, for those that aren't aware, is that the bottle shops are only open between 3 and 7 p.m. I think Wednesday through Sunday. It could be shorter or a different time on one of the other days. And Monday, Tuesday they're closed. So we sort of rocked up Wednesday morning thinking we're out of booze, so we need booze, and so does everyone else in this town. So this is going to be an interesting experience. So Dion, Craig, and I went out.
Sent the boys out to brave the hordes of people.
We were expecting to have to muscle our way out, and honestly, it was fine. There's a police presence there. It is perhaps more noticeable than in a lot of other towns, but nevertheless, the system works, and off you go. I mean, all that said, the daily personal limits on alcohol are perhaps on the optimistic
yes, I think you would even struggle with the daily limit.
I was going to struggle to carry out daily limit of 2 slabs of beer, so that's either 48 bottles stubbies or 60 cans. And on top of that, you could get 6 bottles of wine. And on top of that, you could get one 75 cl bottle of spirits. If I could get through that in a single day, I think we'd have bigger problems. So again, it's an interesting situation going on up there. But we went out, did some errands. I went to Desert Dwellers, which was one of my favourite adverts from the Impaja TV binging days of Cameron Corner. If they don't have it, you don't need it. They had a lot of things, especially for caravanning and 4-wheel driving. So they were great. If you do, and I do suggest that anybody that is thinking about travelling around, don't skip it.
Yeah, honestly, don't. We were nearly going to.
Yeah.
Because of all the news. So glad we didn't.
Yeah. West MacDonnell Ranges, Mereenie Loop, amazing part of the country.
Probably been the best part so far.
Yeah. And anyway, so on our last evening in Alice, we decided to bite the bullet and finally get a sort of professional custom weigh done on the full rig. And it's ended up being a very, very expensive activity. I'd like to obviously shout out to Cameron and Angela of the Travelling Way. So they actually travel around with all of the equipment required to weigh a caravan and vehicle, and it's they were obviously incredibly helpful, not only in weighing it but also providing us with ultimately feedback and assisting us in working out how to balance out our weights.
Yeah.
So that leads us, I guess, to the point which is we've now got to drive down to Adelaide and spend many, many dollars on basically a GVM GCM upgrade for the cruiser.
Yeah, that's going to be a whole nother story.
Yes, we will go into detail about the whole sort of experience and actually understanding the numbers. It's a very contentious topic in the caravanning world.
Yes.
I think one thing that was fascinating to learn is that the angle of your tow ball can impact the weight. By lowering the tow ball, we were able to lower our tow ball weight by 20 kilos. So by lowering
it, a lot. It is a lot.
It has a huge impact because ultimately the tow ball weight is multiplied by 1.5x when you actually apply that as rear axle weight. Anyway, it all gets very technical. I'll sit down and have a whiteboard and show you guys actually how it all works. Nevertheless, that's sort of the main reason we're moseying on down the Unadada track.
Yep.
And heading towards Adelaide, where we have to get a bit of work done, mainly for peace of mind, but then also just to make sure that we're completely all up to date in terms of compliance. So that will be our next episode. But anyway,
yep.
As we just leave you today, we're just going to park up
and have a look at Lake Eyre,
which is very exciting. So this massive salt lake we're just at the southern section here. I think it's sort of a once in 100 years event where you can actually see it full of water. And
nice of you to make an appearance, Kobe.
Thank you, Kobe. So we'll get a bit of footage for you guys. Wow.
All right. Well,
we will catch you next time.
Speak to you soon.
Stay safe. Cheerio.